Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. We're about to start the session on strategies for low carbon transport development in China. Before we get the session going, I just want to mention that there is headphones and instruments for simultaneous translation. There will be at least one of our presenters will be speaking in Chinese. There are more headsets available at the back if yours doesn't work. And I've been asked by the organizers to ask you to please hand these in at the bin at the end. This will be the last session needing the simultaneous translation. Okay, let's begin our session. I just want to make a few introductory remarks. I am the Transport Director for Asian Development Bank working in China. So I'm very excited to be sitting with such a knowledgeable group talking about the big challenges on urban transport in China. We are going to talk about efforts that have been made on strategies for low carbon urban transport, and we're going to try to gauge how far we're getting with those efforts and whether those offer hope for China and other countries. A little bit of context about China. I think all of us know a little bit about China nowadays. It has been urbanizing at a phenomenal rate, from 26% urban in 1990 to more than half urban today, and an expected 70% by 2035. This far outstrips most of the other countries in Asia. China, as I'm sure you know, is the biggest greenhouse gas emitter of all the countries in the world. So what happens in China will be important, not just for China, but for the world. It also is experiencing very rapid motorization. So the transport part of those emissions is not about to tail off immediately. It needs strategies and policies to tackle it. There's also an extremely strong auto industry, and that's another factor when we're talking about the strategies for looking at urban transport. I took a look before the session at yesterday's China Daily, and it reports that Beijing is currently experiencing its longest spell of hazy days this year. This generally happens in the January period. The air quality index in terms of parts per million of PM 2.5 was 422. That is categorized as severe and hazardous for human health. So that's the sort of challenge we actually have. This is not theory. That's the challenge today. In my opinion, it also contains within it the seeds of hope, because people are eager for that to change. Incidentally, Shanghai, which we will be hearing a little bit about this afternoon, it also has problems of that nature. In both cities, something in the region of 30% of that form of air pollution is attributed to vehicle exhausts. I think we can also acknowledge that China is a leader. President Xi Jinping recently announced that China will see its greenhouse gas emissions peak in 2030 and then reduce. And from my side in Asian Development Bank, I can see this filtering into the preparations of China's 13th plan. When China makes these statements, it's not said idly. We also have heard statements recently from the Minister of Environmental Protection, Zhu Zhenjian, who has been championing the dissemination of data on air pollution as being the first step towards tackling air pollution problems, and that is a very radical step. It was not something that was pursued in the past. China is the country that in 20 or 30 years, depending on what you're looking at, has built the world's biggest expressway network from scratch. It's built the world's biggest high-speed rail network, and it also has built the second largest railway network. So here we have a country with tremendous capacity when it puts its mind to something, and it could be the place that gives us hope for the sorts of changes we want to see in urban transport. So today we have got a panel with 3 presenters. They've assured me they're going to be very disciplined in the length of their presentations. And we'll be having 3 discussants, and then we'll have an interaction amongst all of the panelists, and we hope to allow 15 or 20 minutes at the end for you to enter into the discussion. With that, I think that I'd like to briefly mention who our panel are, and I'm going to check the names because we've only just met each other this afternoon. And then we will enter into the presentations. I hope if I walk along, you'll still be able to hear me. I think so. First of all, we have Mr. Guo Zhong. Mr. Zhong is Director of Policy in China Academy of Transportation Science. Sitting next to Mr. Zhong is Jingzhu Li. And Jiangsu is a Senior Technical Advisor for the GIZ Sino-German Climate Change Program. Our next presenter is Professor Pan Haixiao. Professor Pan is a professor of urban planning at Tongji University. Very good to have Professor Pan, so we also don't get lost in only the transportation, we understand the urban dimension. Moving along is Binyam Reja. Binyam is Transport Cluster Leader for China and Mongolia at the World Bank. And finally, in our group, but certainly not least, is Haitao Zhang. Haitao is the Cities and Transport China Director of Embark China and Director of the World Resources Institute. Thank you. We also have a further presenter who's working closely with Haitao. And this is Lulu Xue. Lulu is a research associate at WRI. So we're going to now proceed with a sequence of 3 15-minute presentations on different aspects of urban transport strategy in China. And to begin, we begin with Guo Zhong.
Thank you.
Thank you.
先生们、女士们，大家下午好。非常高兴，也非常荣幸能有机会在这样一个环境和这样一个舞台，给大家介绍一下中国公交都市建设的一个情况。那么我今天最主要汇报的分为3个方面。第一个就是讲是什么呢？我们在过去的一段时间内，应该说是中国城市的交通应该是突飞猛进。那么遇到了很多方面的一些问题，包括交通拥堵啊、交通环境啊，以及包括一些环境方面的问题。那么在这样一个背景下，那么我们交通运输部为了落实公共交通业发展的战略，那么提出来了我们公交都市的一个建设。那么第二个我要讲的是什么呢？就是讲第二方面，讲一下我们公交都市建设的一个现在的一个情况，以及我们公交都市示范城市选了37个城市之后，他们都是采用了一些什么样的一个措施来提高他们的公共交通分担率，来改善他们的一个公共交通的一个出行环境，来提高我们的整个出行的一个满意度。那么第3个方面就是，这个公交都市建设之后，那么我们政府怎么去考核它？因为公交都市的建设实际上是交通运输部是有一定的资金支持的。那么为了很好的就是说最后5年之后，为了考核这些城市它的这个建设的情况应该达到什么样的一个程度之后呢，那么我们建设了我们一个公交都市的一个考核的一个系统。那么主要是今天分为这3个方面进行一个介绍。那么首先我介绍一下我们公交都市建设提出的一个背景。那么讲到公交都市建设呢，就一定要说到我们中国快速的一个城镇化。在这近30年内，我们中国应该说是经历了一个非常快速的一个城镇化，大概有将近30%的一个增长率。那么相当于每年将近有2000万的人口从农村到城市。那么我们城市客运系统都会面临着一个很大的一个挑战。那么这是图我们可以显示出，就是说近30年，我们把这30年分为3个阶段。那么在第一个阶段，也就是从我们81年到91年这一期间，我们的城镇化大概的增长率是6.3%。那么到了第二个阶段，也就第2个10年，是从91年到2001年是将近增长了10.8%。那么我们再看看第3个阶段，应该增长速度是越来越快，到了13.7%。那么这个快速机动化的一个增长，那么使得我们城市的交通拥堵啊，包括一些出行距离都会越来越长。那么另外一个就是，这是因为这些城镇化之后导致我们的建成区的面积是越来越大，那么出行距离也是越来越长。那么这样的话，人们一代机动化的这种出行的方式是越来越严重。那么特别是在94年和04年的时候，我们国家提出了2个关于小汽车的一个发展的一个政策，那么刺激了我们中国小汽车的一个快速增长。那么同样，我们把这近30年的一个增长情况分为3个阶段，以10年为一个阶段进行划分的话，那我们看第1个阶段，那么它的增长速度和最近10年的一个增长速度来看的话，变化是非常快的，应该说是将近每年有平均有10万辆的1000万辆的车的增长。那么正是因为这种快速的机动化和城镇化，导致我们很多的交通方面的问题，包括环境方面的问题。那么从这些图片我们可以看出来，中国目前一些城市发展的一些情况，包括所面临的一些交通拥堵啊、交通安全啊，以及环境污染等等方面的问题。那么这张图显示的是在我们2012年环境部门监测到的，包括我们一些1线的城市，比如西安呐、太原呐、石家庄等等一些省会城市，那么它的环境严重污染的一些天数。那么从这个图我们可以看出来，应该说是我们的中国城市所面临的，包括我们的交通拥堵啊、交通安全啊，以及交通环境方面面临着很严重的一个问题。那么这个图我们可以看出来的是什么呢？就是说在2001年的时候，我们整个中国城市交通运输方式的一个结构。那么我们可以对比一下，从04年到10年这之间的一个变化方式。应该说我们的 机动化增长的水平应该是非常高的，但是一个很可惜的就是我们的绿色交通出行的方式，这里包括我们的包括我们的公共自行车、包括我们的公交，还有我们的步行以及我们的自行车这种出行方式都是在进行下降的。虽然我们的公交是有一定的上升的幅度，大概有8%的一个上涨幅度，但是很可惜的是，我们的我们的那个步行和自行车下降的非常快，而且我们的私人小汽车的一个分担率是增长的非常快，不到10年的时间，小汽车的这个分担率从3%上升到将近17%，这个增长速度可以说是非常之快的。那么正是因为这种快速的机动化和城镇化，导致所的交通拥堵，使得我们更多的浪费在交通拥堵造成的更多的一个时间的浪费、能源的消耗，以及对我们的居民生活环境的一个影响，以及城市竞争力都有很大的一个影响。那么正是因为在这样的发生的这些变化之后，我们交通运输部我们的国家为了应对这种交通拥堵，提出了我们公共交通优先发展战略。在2012年，国务院发布了一个关于公共交通优先发展的指导意见，这是我们建国以来第一个国家层面的公交优先发展指导意见。那么它所强调的包含了几个方面，一个是政策和法规方面的一些优先，包括我们土地利用的一个优先，还有财税方面的优先，以及我们道路资源路权分配上的一个优先，以及我们提高我们信息化技术的利用。另外，同时呢，我们国务院目前正在推动我们国家的第1条公共交通法律的一个推进工作。那么，我们交通部为了落实公交优先发展战略，在2012年，交通部提出了我们公交都市建设的这样一个示范工程。那么目前已经有37个城市被选择为公交都市的示范城市。那么最主要的，我们建设这个公交都市呢，最主要是通过我们一些资金上的一些支持，来吸引我们城市的地方政府，特别是我们的当地的一些市长或者是分管的市长，然后引起对我们公共交通的一个重视。那么这个工程呢，交通运输部主要从4个方面给予地方城市一方面的支持。首先，第一个方面是我们综合交通枢纽的建设，另外一个是 ITS 方面，就是说运营调度指挥系统这一方面的一个资金建设支持。另外一个是 BRT 的一个信息化的一个系统的支持建设。另外还有清洁能源车辆的一个资金上的一个支持。那么我们看看这个图，这个表可以看出来，就是我们根据我们当时在2012年的时候，37个城市申报之后，我们统计的一个资料，我们从他们3个最主要的指标可以看出来，它现在的状况，通过我们的公共交通分担率、500米的站点覆盖率，以及我们的 IC 卡的使用率，这3个指标，我们对比我们当时国务院提出来的建设目标来看的话，应该说都还具有很大的一个差距。特别是我们公共交通分担率要从目前的48%提升到60%，还有12%的这样一个上升的一个空间。应该说，公交分担率这一块，通过目前国内外的一些城市的经验来看的话，那么它的公共交通分担率每提高1个百分点都是非常困难的。那么我们这些城市是通过什么样的一个手段来提升我们的公共交通分担率的呢？那么我们通过它的一个建设的一个实施方案来看，我们总结了3个方面。第一个方面是通过我们的公共交通引导我们的城市发展。另外一个就是通过我们的一个交通需求管理的措施，来合理的引导我们小汽车的一个出行，同时来推动我们公共交通的一个发展。另外一个是我们还要强调一些我们绿色交通的出行，因为刚才前面我也分析到了，就是我们这个自行车、我们的步行这样的出行方式都在快速的一个下降。那么我们为了提高他们整个绿色的一个出行的一个分担率，那么他们也提出了一些绿色出行的一些相应的一些措施。那么我这里的一个图是，通过在中期进行考核的时候，2年之后，对这37个城市里面其中1个城市，他汇报的过程中就是提到了，就是说经过他们2年的一个建设，包括他们基础设施的一个建设啊，那么通过他们还有一些等等一些措施，然后使他们的公共交通分担率一个很大的一个提升。另外，乘客的满意度也从73%上升到了90%，应该有上升了一个17%的一个比例。 那么第3个我要介绍一下，就是刚才说了，就是我们公交都市37个城市要建设。另外在“十三五”的时候，因为我们目前正在制作我们国家下一个“十三五”的一个计划，那么有可能我们会在下一个5年的时候建设更多的公交都市。那么这些公交都市呢，因为第1批和第2批的公交都市最主要它集中在这种比较大型的城市，城市人口在150万以上的这些城市。那么我们接下来在下一个5年的计划的过程中，可能要面向一些中小城市推进我们的公交都市的建设。那么如何进行考核呢？这是一个很关键的一个方面。那么首先，从行业管理部门来说，应该做的考核体系的建设应该是非常重要的，包括我们一些政策的制定啊，还有些我们每年都要编制的一些年报啊，通过这些考核体系，我们可以知道这些城市的一些发展情况是什么样子的，城市之间的一个发展水平的一个对比，每个城市它可以了解它自己在处于一个什么样的一个发展水平。那么对于企业来说，那么它也是希望它能了解到它整个那个公交的一个运行的状况等等。那么这个是我们整个公交都市考核体系的一个业务的框架，分为了4个层面。首先第1个层面是企业层面，那么第2个层面是城市层面，就是 CDOT。那么这个城市层面，我们是通过刚才说了，公交都市有一笔资金，大概每个城市是将近1000万的引导资金，来推动它整个城市的一个信息化的一个建设。那么这个信息化的建设呢，包括了3个平台。第1个就是出行信息服务的系统，那么第2个是运营调度系统，那么第3个就是我们的 ITS 出行服务信息系统。那么第2个层面和第3个层面就是在省级和国家层面都建议相应的一些监测考核系统，包括4个方面的系统。第1个是我们公交都市的一个考核的系统，第2个是我们公交都市的一个评估系统，那么第3个是我们的一个综合监测系统。那么第4个就是我们道路运行的一个监测系统。那么我们这是一个整个的大的一个系统。那么基于我们现在目前正在做的一个国家公共交通的数据库，那么基于这样一个数据库，让我们建立这样一个平台。那么其中我们公交都市考核的一个平台就是在这个框架里面。那么我接下来介绍一下我们公交都市的一个考核系统的一个2个应用系统。首先第1个是我们公交都市的一个评估系统，包括我们对一些主要的指标进行监测，包括我们的出行分担率啊、满意度啊，还有我们的万人公交车的保有量啊，以及一些运营补贴方面的一些进行它的一个评估和考核。最后，只有通过我们这个考核之后，然后达到它的发展目标之后，我们对它进行这些示范城市进行授牌，或者是如果说是达不到这个目标的，我们可能要继续进行它的一个示范的一个建设。然后直到它达到它所提出来的一个相应的建设的一个目标。那么另外一个就是我们的公交都市的一个监测系统，这个监测系统相当于是一个动态的。刚才上面的这个系统是评估系统，是我们1年进行1次。那么这个是我们动态的一个系统，我们可以是相当于是每天都可以监测到我们的公共交通每天发生的一些什么，比如说我们的每天的客运量是怎么样，我们的交通有没有事故发生，我们的排放怎么样，以及我们的一些其他的一些资金的投入等等，进行一个动态的一个监测。谢谢大家，我的汇报到此结束，谢谢。
Thank you very much, Guo. I'm sure you'll agree that was a very interesting and informative presentation. Our next presentation will be by Professor Pan, who's going to tell us about strategies in the case of Shanghai. Very good.
This is the last one. 大家下午好。那么呢，我呢就是很高兴有机会在这里这个介绍一下上海的这个交通发展的一些情况，对吧？那么这个交通政策哪些是有效的？我们做了很多讨论，对吧？就是这个每个城市呢可能情况不太一样。那么上海跟中国其他城市相比呢， 有些交通政策相对来说呢比较独特，对吧？因此呢，我就做一个介绍。第一个呢，就是上海的这个人口，那么就是上海的人口呢有2400万左右，这个在城市中心，也就是这个我们叫内环线以内，大概有将近500万人，400多万人，所以呢，这个密度是很高的。这个密度呢，将近3万人一个平方公里，那可能是世界上少有的，在这么大个面积里有这么多人口，对吧？第二个呢，就是城市化经济发展一定会带来城市的扩张。那在这里呢，我们提城市扩张，而不是提城市蔓延，因为这些空间是必须的。为了改善人们的居住条件，为了有新的经济活动，必须要有新的空间的扩张，那么与此同时呢，我们也看到，在中国呢，这个小汽车的增长是非常快的，特别是2005年以后，这样的一个增长的速度是以前所没有预计到的，而很多中国的城市呢，实际上丧失了在这个时候最好控制小汽车的机会，所以很多城市现在做调节相对来说非常困难，对吧？那么我们看一下这个上海的这个交通方式的分配划分，我们可以看到呢，这个叫非机动化交通仍然是占很高的这个比例，对吧？但是呢，大家也可以看到呢，在城市中心地区，这个小汽车也就是 PC 还是蛮高的。那么这个在中心地区呢，公共交通比例也是蛮高的。那么什么是城市中心地区呢？是有一个400万人住的地方，所以我们的城市中心是一个很大的概念啊。那么另外一个呢，就是很多的时候呢，我们看到随着城市的扩张，人们的出行距离会增长的比较远，但是这种情况呢，在上海呢稍微好一点。这个人们的出行距离是增长了，但是平均距离的增长并不是像我们想象的这么远。那如果没有像想象这么远呢，很多出行就不一定要通过机动化的方式来解决，啊。而之所以这个出行距离不是这么远呢，是因为我们对于土地使用的控制和土地使用混合这2点呢做的相对来说还是比较严格的。也就是说呢，我们要解决交通问题，光从交通设施的建设来看可能是不够的，必须在土地使用的控制上做一些这个比较深入的工作，啊。那么这个交通的这个管理机制呢，从原来的这个自上而下的，变成自上而下和自下而上相结合，也就是原来呢是这个城市政府啊，对交通问题负责，现在更多的呢是这个区政府也要对交通问题负责。那么这个时候呢，就2方面的利益呢，2方面的努力结合起来，对吧？那么上海最有效的一个措施，就是对于小汽车使用的控制，就是你要使用小汽车必须有一个牌照，而有这个牌照以后呢，在高峰的时间，你就可以用这个高架的路。那么这样的话呢，就相当于英国的这个伦敦的一个拥挤收费，就在拥挤的时候，你可以比较快的进入到城市中心去，是吧？那我们比较一下北京跟上海的小汽车的拥有量，我们就看到呢，这个上海的人口要大于北京，这个 GDP 要比北京高，但是它的小汽车呢比北京要少300万辆。如果我们把这个300万辆小汽车加到上海的道路网上，我想上海的交通拥挤状况一定比北京更严重，因为至少北京还有很宽的路可以停车，上海连这个路都没有，对吧？那么我们再看一下这个小汽车的这个拥有的这个情况，我们就看到基本上是差一个3倍，这样的一个量，啊，差一个量，这么大的量。那么这个叫汽车牌照的拍卖，从这个80年代86年实际上就开始对汽车的这个拥有实行一些控制的政策，对吧？然后呢，到2002年，这种政策呢逐步的完善，我们就可以看到呢，这个它这个大大的改善了这个城市的这个叫交通建设的资金状况，因为呢这样的一个这个叫 牌照拍卖的费用，很多的时候呢被用在地铁的建设、公共交通的改善，但是呢，也有用在这个城市的这个快速路的建设，对吧？那么我们在最新一轮的白皮书里面呢，就提到这个上海小汽车使用的上限是不是能够控制在20%？这个是在全世界的城市里面呢，很少有这样的一个案例的，在这么大的一个地方，我们如果能够达到20%的小汽车的这个使用率，这是一个非常好的一个前景，对吧？那么这个汽车控制的这个政策，自从上海实施了以后，有了很多争论，那甚至很多这个中央的部门认为呢，这样的一个政策是跟国家的政策是违背的，对吧？所以这个有很大的压力。但是呢，从2011年开始，北京、广州、天津、杭州、贵阳，以及最近的深圳，都开始采取这个小汽车拥有控制啊。那么这个方式的不同，而且越来越多的城市呢，如果他们的市长没有采取小汽车拥有控制，他都觉得呢这个是政府不作为，所以呢也在积极的在想采取小汽车控制的政策，对吧？那么另外一个政策呢，就是对于停车费的控制。在2006年的时候，那么这个停车费在城市中心是15块钱，而在我们中国大多数城市呢，停车费大概就是3块钱、5块钱。那么15块钱在当时是很贵的，并且呢，我们在不同的区域，这个停车费是不一样的。那么这样就导致人们到市中心的时候呢，他觉得如果我自己开车，还不如叫一个出租车；我自己开车呢，还不如坐公交车。那因此呢，他就对于小汽车的这个期望就没有像其他城市这么高，对吧？那因为它有其他的方式，对吧？但问题是什么呢？问题就是这个停车费从当时开始到现在就从来没涨过价。那么如果这个停车费不涨价呢，就说明这个停车费是越来越便宜了，收入是越来越提高了，而停车费越来越便宜了。那我们可以想象，人们用小汽车的愿望会降低吗？那显然不会，对吧？它只会提高。所以就是这个里面呢，就要有一个更好的这个灵活的这个叫财政的这个政策，对吧？那么另外一个呢，就是上海呢有很多历史的街区，在这些历史街区呢，当时我们用交通模型进行计算，那么结论就是这些街区的道路必须拓宽，这些历史街区必须拆除重新建设。但是这些历史街区我们觉得很有价值，那么就在比较早的时候，2000年的左右，有一个地方法规，就是叫做历史街区保护的法规。在这个法规里就说呢，对于这些地区的道路是严禁拓宽的。那么既然这些道路不能够进行建设，那我们就必须想其他的办法，让大家也能够交通出行更方便。反倒是今天在上海，就是在这些道路没有拓宽的地方，是变成最有吸引力的地方。那么这个公共交通的建设，从这个叫很早时间就开始建设，那现在已经有16条地铁线了，是吧？那么我们有这个非常广泛的这个公交的这个线路，在上海呢大概有1000条公交线路，所以对一般人来讲呢，找到公交线路是一个非常不太可能的事情。那么有2万部公交车，啊，然后呢，这个上海的出租车服务曾经是全国的榜样，就是出租车是可以信赖的。当然，现在的服务水平下降了。那么正是由于这些服务水平下降，导致人们会转向对于小汽车的需求，是吧？然后呢，这个叫大规模的地铁建设，从1993年开始呢，建第一条地铁，后面因为世博会的这个上海的这个2011年世博会，地铁就抓紧建设，所以呢，就是相对来说呢，我们在小汽车比较快速发展之前，这个地铁呢就开始建设了，对吧？那么我们看一下这个在中国这个不同的时期有地铁的城市的数量，对吧？你看在1990年到1995年的时候，只有3个城市有地铁，对吧？ 现在呢，就是越来越多的城市，将近20个城市呢开始有地铁，但是呢，由于我们原来对于地铁建设呢控制太严，很多城市来讲呢都可能已经太晚了，因为我们不可能再预计这个城市的人口规模再会扩大1倍，而如果人口规模不是扩大1倍，建地铁我们这个不犯错误是很困难的。当这个城市人口是扩展的时候，建地铁发生错误的机会是很小的，因为当你发生错误，总归有新的人口把你补充进去，所以很容易成功，对吧？那么地铁的这个增长，我们就可以看到呢，这个在接近上海的世博会的时候是快速增长，对吧？1年有接近100公里的地铁的建设，这么高一个速度，对吧？那么所以呢，这个就每天有700万人到800万人，实际上是在地下，对吧？就是坐这个地铁，对吧？那么上海的这个密度，我们刚才跟大家介绍，从这个图上就看得更清楚。这个就是我们有一个非常高密度的硬核，这个密度是非常高的。那么这个在很多城市里面呢，可能它都不具有这样的一个特性，对吧？那么我们也呢强调这个叫邻里单元的设计，就是在居住区一个新的区的建设的时候，我们会提供一些服务的设施，提供一些这个菜场，提供一些这个小学，就可以使人们呢，就是相对来说不要走得这么太远，对吧？不要像美国一样买个牛奶要开车15分钟，那我们可能走个5分钟就可以了，对吧？那么我们看到呢，就是由于这样的一个混合呢，使得这个非机动车的方式相对来说就比较好，对吧？那么我们也强调这个私人的介入和这个轨道交通站点地区的开发，我们就可以看到呢，这个在轨道交通站点上有大容量的这样的一个开发，对吧？那么这样的话呢，就可以使人们这个比较少的依赖小汽车，对吧？那么这个叫非机动化的方式仍然是一个非常主要的这种方式。我们就看到这张图片是非常甜美的一个图像，对吧？那么这个是在我们同济大学旁边，那么比都是小汽车要舒服的很多，对吧？那么当然我们也有些问题，就是还是对这个公路交通的建设比较重视。我们看到我们的这个高速公路的建设仍然是增长很快，对吧？那么当然这个世博会，由于世博会的这个机会能够很好的利用，我们可以看到呢，这个世博会呢已经变成一个活生生的一个展示的平台，使大家看到呢公共交通是可以起很大的作用的，对吧？那么当然也有些问题，比如说这个对于不同社会群体的这个影响，他们的时间的问题，你就会发现呢，低收入群体总归是受到一点影响的，是吧？然后呢，这个从这个郊区到市中心，会有很多不方便的地方，是吧？但是呢，我们一个结论呢，就发现呢，就是在上海，浦东跟浦西的交通政策也是差别蛮大的。如果我们到浦东去看的呢，上海的很多好的政策完全都看不见。为什么会看不见呢？是因为浦东的建设是没有约束的，没有约束就没有好的交通政策，对吧？所以呢，就是我的这个结论呢，就是你必须接受挑战，接受约束，然后找到最好的答案，对吧？然后必须要改善城市中心的这个吸引力，提高城市的价值，对吧？并且呢，不要光是讨论，要做得越快越早越好，对吧？然后呢，要把土地使用和交通联合起来考虑，而不仅仅考虑有没有拥堵的事情。如果一个城市是没有拥堵的，这个城市是可怕的。谢谢。
Thank you, Professor Pan. I'm sure that we're going to return to some of the mechanisms you've been describing in a few moments. Our next presentation is going to be done by Lulu Xue. She's going to talk about land value capture in the southern city of Shenzhen.
Thank you so much for the kind introduction. So gonna switch mode to English. So for my today's presentation, I will circle back to the popular topic of land value capture. Yes, it's another land value capture topic. However, you won't get sick and tired of it at the end of the day. So for my today's topic is about the real plus property development with a special focus on the case of Shenzhen. So why all of a sudden land value capture becomes so important, and why now? I believe Mrs. Robin Chase brought up the issue of land value capture in yesterday's keynote session, and also there's dedicated session on land value capture today. So why does land value capture so important right now? I believe different countries may have different reasons, and the answer for China is that is the rapid urbanization that has a huge demand for housing and the transit services. And to provide the housing and the transit services, there is a stunning price tag posing on both the public sector and the private sector. And in the urban rail transit sector in particular, the financing pressure is even bigger. It is estimated that the capital cost of funding new urban rail transit infrastructure in the next 5 years in China is about 1.5 trillion RMB. And this doesn't even include the debt service and operation cost of the existing infrastructure. And moreover, the price or the fare box revenue of the urban transit system cannot come even closer to cover the cost of the transit system. Here, the left-hand graph shows the case of Beijing, where the red little box is the operation revenue, whereas the rest is the cost, so that you can see the sharp gap. And on top of the widening financial gap, there is also something that is structurally wrong with the current financing practice to fund the urban rail transit system. And for example, the broader city finance system that relies on land leasing to fund the urban rail transit system is not helpful or healthy for the urban development. As a matter of fact, land leasing is a type of land value capture practice. It has been successful and effective for countries like China that doesn't have a lot of money, but do have a lot of public-owned land to kick off large infrastructure project financing. However, the over-reliance on land leasing has backfires. And for example, in China, it's led to urban sprawl, the speculation of housing prices, and the depletion of agricultural land. So in order to solve the above problems, a need or fundamental paradigm shift. And many believe that the real plus property development can provide the solution. And real plus property development, as many of you know, has been commonly seen in cities like Singapore, Hong Kong, and Tokyo, where they create a public-private partnership and use the real estate development revenues to cover the cost of a transit project. It is promising for China because, for one, it bundles urban transit development with the land development so that it encourages this kind of compact TOD development. Moreover, it mobilizes the private sector's resources and investment so that it can reduce the financial liability from the public sector's side. So the question with real plus property development in China is that since this is such a great solution, why doesn't it being widely adopted in China? The answers to this question, as many of you may have already heard a million times for other type of policy, is that we have the institutional and regulatory barriers. And fortunately, there are several cities in China that were able to adopt this idea and implement it well, and Shenzhen is one of the cities. And Shenzhen is perhaps the most successful city in terms of implementing real plus property development in the sense that it is not only the early adopter of real plus property development, it also has successfully implemented on the ground at full scale, especially for the phase 3 real transit project, which is the dashed line on the graph. So what really constitutes Shenzhen's success? We believe that the formula of Shenzhen's success doesn't lie on any single factor. As a matter of fact, it relies on a host of factors that ranging from the financial arrangement, urban planning, land policies, and the business operation from the private sector. And all of this is supported by a strong multi-agency and multi-stakeholder coordination. So in the following, we will examine each and every of these factors one by one to hopefully to decipher Shenzhen's success. So the first factors that account for Shenzhen's success is the financial arrangement. For real plus property development, it requires the city government to, instead of giving financial contribution to the metro company, it gives the land development rights to the metro company at a relatively low cost. However, this method doesn't work in China because any piece of land for commercial uses has to go out to the open market auction process. And by going through this open market auction process, it means for the metro company, it not only have to pay an exceptionally high price in order to get the land development rights, it also have the possibilities not to win the bid or getting the development rights. So in order to work around this issue, Shenzhen came up with several solutions. One of the solutions came up in phase 2 that works well in the existing institutional framework, that they use this strategy called exclusive land auction, where by imposing certain criteria that to make sure only the metro companies can win the bid, so that to give it the land development rights directly to the metro company. And later, the municipal government return the land concession fees back to the company so that it won't suffer financially. And of course, this is just a temporal solution. It can sort of like cheating on the existing system. So later on in phase 3, the city came up with another solution when the national government allows the city to give the land development rights directly to the metro company, instead of forcing the companies to go through the open market auction. And the amount of land that the government gives to the metro company is equivalent to the financial contribution that the government committed initially. So this is kind of like a permanent solution. And financial arrangement is actually one of the many factors that needed to work out before successfully implement real plus property development on the ground in China. Planning is another important area. Although many Chinese cities, as you may have heard, is well known for its uniformly high density development, many cities fail to tap into the advantage of having or even higher density mixed land use nearby the transit stations. This is because many cities' planning system are government-led process that is not market responsive enough. And moreover, there is little coordination between the transit planning and the urban land planning. And lastly, the zoning system sometimes is too rigid that doesn't even allow for changes. So in Shenzhen, Since the value creation is realized by real estate market, one remarkable thing that the city did is to engage the private sector at the early stage of planning so that market interests and concerns can be reflected in the plan. And the graph here shows the standard planning process here in China, as well as the timing when the private companies come into play. And on top of tapping into the market power, another important change that the city made to the planning system is to coordinate the urban regulatory plan with the real transit line detail plan so that transit lines can be adjusted to get close to the land that has greater value creation potential, and also the land can be adjusted to have higher density and mixed land use. And the later point related to another important change that the city made to their planning system, that is to make it even more flexible. For example, it introduced this TOD zone that allows land to, the density of the land to be adjusted within certain range. And also it introduced our land use tab, which is called the special district, where both the density and the land use tab can be adjusted. Lastly, land policy is another barrier for many Chinese cities to implement real plus property development. This is basically because land that is designed for transit facilities has to be leased by agreement between government and metro company, whereas land that is planned for commercial development has to goes to the open market auction. And this creates a huge confusion because for land that has both transit uses and commercial uses. So what Shenzhen did creatively is to introduce different air rights on the same piece of land. So for the floor area that's dedicated for transit uses goes to the lease by agreement, and the floor areas that dedicated for commercial use goes to the open auction. And lastly, another important takeaway from Shenzhen's case is that land value capture is not the only public sector's undertaking. It is also very important for the developers, the metro companies, to have a really good business model and operation to start with. This is very important because a lot of metro companies in China are city-owned. They are not business savvy enough. So certain strategies need to be in place in order to help them understand and play along with the market well. And moreover, the phasing of the development is also equally important because real plus property development in cities usually come in large scale, and the sudden release of a large amount of housing to the real estate market can be very dangerous. Lastly, real plus property development is a large project for metro companies. Therefore, certain strategies to spread the cost and the risk for metro company and forming partnership with other developers is equally important. So taken together, real plus property development is not just our financial tool. Different factors like urban planning, land policies, business operation, and multi-agency coordination all have their fair share of contribution. Moreover, national government plays an important role in terms of allow cities to be innovative in terms of financing approaches. And lastly, the last point we want to make here is that Shenzhen's case also have its uniqueness. the success of Shenzhen's case doesn't mean any other Chinese city can be successful in this. So we basically encourage cities to examine at least 3 enabling conditions before jumpstart on real plus property development. One is the market condition. If the cities experience weak real estate market, they need to think carefully the timing, the feasibility of the real plus property development. Also, political will is the key because there are so many departments are involved, so many stakeholders are involved. The project has to be led by the mayor of the city. Moreover, trust and confidence in all parties is equally crucial because in China, they're like the public sector often lack the confidence and trust in the private sector. But this is needed to create our mutual dialogue environment. And lastly, real plus property development is technically challenging. Therefore, pure political will won't push this through. It has to be complemented by multidisciplinary team and capable consulting capacities, both inside and outside the public sector. So that's it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Lulu. I'd now like to bring in some of our other panelists. I'm going to start with Jingzhu. And I have a question. We've heard of some quite impressive progress in China. The 37 cities program, which is now going to expand. I think a very interesting insight into Shanghai, and also with element of noting limitations. It's not all perfect. And this quite challenging but successful land value capture model in Shenzhen. I also work in China, and not always is the story quite as successful or simple. And the question I want to ask you is, what is the situation like on the ground in many cities? And has the change in thinking reached mayors? And what needs to be done to spread these sorts of good models more widely?
Actually, in China, so from the central government, they have paid high attention on the development of public transport, and the same in the city level, on the city level. So therefore, also in the small and medium-sized cities, Chinese cities, the mayors, they are aware and they want to promote the public transport. Because, you know, before 10 years ago, people thought in China, we need automotive industry, we need to promote cars. But nowadays, we face the challenge, the congestion, the air pollution. So all the people are aware we need to change the situation. And I think all the 3 presentations are excellent. And I want to add only one more perspective from the point of view free transport. Because we all know the urbanization is a big challenge, and we want to solve the congestion problem, the air pollution. But you know, we cannot solve the problem only through the good measures in the area of passenger transport. We need to pay more attention to the free transport. I only take one example of Peking. In Peking, we have only, so if we compare the total number of private cars and the trucks, the heavy duty or light duty, the private cars, they are 10 times more than the trucks. But if we have a look on the PM 2.5, they account the same volume. Why? because the truck, they're not so clean. Private cars are more cleaner than trucks. And also, if we buy the cars, we are able to buy the good cars. We see the China, we have the CHN4 cars, but for the logistic companies, they need to calculate, and they don't want to buy CHN4 trucks because too expensive. So we have in China still a lot of yellow label trucks. The emission of those trucks is really high. It is very difficult for the Chinese government to get it out, to scrap the trucks. So therefore, this is a bigger challenge for the Ministry of Transport, Ministry of Environment, also for the national, the NDRC, National Development and Reform Committee. And so I think in this area, we need more initiative to, so the government, the industries to take initiative to change the situation, to get the low carbon development also of the free transport. Thank you.
So is that a problem of lack of financing, or have people costed this out, and how can that be tackled?
Okay, lack of financing, this is also a problem because for the logistics companies, if they change the trucks, we all know there are good trucks on the market, high-end trucks, also from the brand, the foreign brand, but they are very expensive. And the Chinese logistics company, they are running with very little margin, so they are not able. They don't want to change. So therefore, we need to take initiative also from the shipper side, from the government. That, for example, we have now a green initiative, a green freight initiative in China. We want to try to convince more shippers, more customers of logistics company that they can say, okay, I need green transport services. I want to pay a little bit more. And from the other side, the government, they can pay a little bit, so subsidized. Because, you know, we have subsidized for private cars. Now is a good time to start to pay a little bit subsidized also for the trucks, the heavy duties.
One of the characteristics of the trucking industry in China is a very large proportion of the industry is single owner operators, and that adds to the challenge. Now, I'd like to move along to some of our other two colleagues, and I want to ask a question to Haitao. We heard in I think it was in Guo's presentation, and also to some degree in the professor's presentation, about indications of rising public transport share, at least in some examples. What do you think the thinking is of the urban population in Chinese cities about that difficult choice of not aspiring to having the car, but instead using public transport?
Basically, before I go to my solutions, I would like to provide my personal experience. In Beijing, I used to live in Tongzhou County, which is 17 kilometers away from the center of Beijing. And basically, in 2012, I moved back to China from US. I have been working and studying here a couple of years. and I used to live in Tongzhou, which is 17 kilometers far away from central of Beijing. And basically, when I back to China, first thing I did is buy a new car. And because it's 17 kilometers, it's kind of far away from office in China, in Chinese scale. So I take my car every day from my home to the to office. And just in 2014, I remember 2 years later, and on the expressway from Tongzhou County to Beijing, so they opened the bus priority road in the AM peak and the PM peak. So I remember from 7 to 9 o'clock, they are open one bus lane on the expressway. And at that time, I changed my behavior. I take bus every day from my home, and from my home to my working place. It's typically almost similar time from comparing to my driving my own car. So basically, my personal behavior changed. And after that, in 2015, I remember. Let me see. No. In the same year, just I take a bus from my home to the office. By the end of 2014, I buy a new apartment within the secondary roadway of Beijing. You know, it's a very valuable area of Beijing. It's very expensive apartment in Beijing, and my travel behavior also was changed there from bus to the walk. I walk from my home to the office every day, like one way. It takes me like 25 minutes from door to door, which means from my home to the office 25 minutes, and after work and another 25 minutes from my office to the home. What I want to see is basically from my personal experience. I would like to share is something government can do is, for example, some policy, some new innovative way to create. So like after they open the bus lane in the AM peak and the PM peak, the people change the personal behavior from car driving to the bus user. And also, if you can plan if you're staying in good location, or if you can do very good planning, like integrated your land use and your transportation, even make your travel more friendly and more convenient with non-motorized transportation. So one way is the government can promote, like open the bus lane on the expressway, and I also learned from Beijing Municipal Commission, Beijing Municipal Commission of Transport. They are planning to open more bus lane on the expressway citywide, which means in this year, by the end of this year, or maybe like another 100 kilometers busway will open on the expressway. And another thing is, I think is the TDM, and you know is travel demand management. And one way is we promote the transportation. Another way we have to take some economic way to push people shift from personal car driving to the bus user. So, for example, Beijing is looking for some way on TDM, like low emission zone and the congestion charge. You know, if you learn from some publication like Beijing Air Cleaning Action Plan, published 2 years ago, it states very clearly, and the congestion charge maybe is the solution to be used in China to make the cleaner and provide a better air environment. So I think congestion charge is with the low emission zone will be effective countermeasures to be considered by Beijing municipal government. And so one way is we can provide infrastructure friendly to the bus to the public transportation. Another way, we have to take some strict economic related countermeasures like congestion charge, like parking. Yeah, from the presentation done by Professor Pan is talk about how effective of the parking policy changed in Shanghai, and in fact the people change the behavior, and I think that's why at the beginning of the presentation done by Mr. Guo is talk about the transit metropolis project. So one of major goal is promote public transportation system in China, but not only besides promotion of public transportation, they also look at some others like integrated transportation with the urban planning and transport and the land uses, and also try to through that demonstration project to also get some benefit on air pollution and the environment. So I think it's not a single one answer. Is how to make people shift from one way to another way. So I think we have to take comprehensive measures to help on that.
Thank you. That was more than I expected as an answer to that question, but very, very helpful. Binyam, we've had some discussion about use of schemes for restricting the numbers of vehicles. And in the discussion, it's come across that seems to work quite well as a means of restricting congestion. But other cities, in fact, it was compared, I think, with London, but those other cities used a pricing mechanism more directly. Do you think that's something that needs to be further explored in China?
Yeah, thanks, Tyrrell, for the question. As you've heard, there's a lot happening in China in terms of how to cope with congestion, and one of the elements is some form of travel demand management. Until now, what we've seen in China is more of an administrative measure to control vehicle ownership. So you have to get into a lottery, for example, if you're in Beijing, to own a car. So if you're one of the lucky ones, then you get the car. But the problem is it doesn't actually influence your behavior once you own the car, because your decision on the margin whether to drive or not is no longer affected. So what we see is, okay, it's limiting the growth of the vehicle population in the city, but whether it's actually having an impact in the rush hour traffic is not, it's quite debatable. Now the Beijing Transport Research Center has done some indexing and has done some review, and they do show some kind of a decline in the congestion index in Beijing. But we don't know how we attribute that, whether we attribute it to this administrative measure, or whether it's because there are now more subways, people are taking more subways, or there's just an economic decline. So our discussion with them is actually they should do more of a more robust econometric exercise to control for different variables that are actually going to explain what the decline has been as a result of that. So while I think this administrative measure for controlling vehicle is fine, it's a good starting point, but it's probably not sufficient to actually manage the congestion and influence behavior. So in Beijing, for example, now the government has now decided they will study and they will explore the possibility of introducing congestion pricing like what we see in London and other cities. So they're doing now the survey, and a number of development partners are working with them in this kind of study. So we'll see whether the study will come up with specific recommendation and whether Beijing will be the first city to introduce congestion pricing. But that's yet to be seen.
Very interesting. Now, I think it's about time that we invited members of the audience to offer their questions and comments. Please come up to a microphone, tell us who you are, and we're very keen to have your questions.
Yes, I'm John Wetmore with pedestrians.org. For people in Chinese cities who still want to walk, what are the walkways, the sidewalks, the pavements like? What are conditions like for pedestrians?
We have the urban transport planning code in China. It shall be applied to all the urban construction. If you look at this code, you can find there are plenty of space you must provide when you construct a new road. That's why the pedestrian pavement relatively is in quite good condition, but not at the road intersection, because our traffic engineer believe we shall give more space for car at the intersection. That's why it's quite difficult for the people to cross the street.
Anybody else like to comment on that? I've certainly noticed in Beijing that it can be quite difficult to cross the road.
我用中文说了，是这样的，中国的自行交通的自行车的一个发展和慢行车的这个行人道的这个发展是因城市而异的，因为中国城市它的面积是非常大的，它地理环境和自然条件也是差异是非常大的。你像我们在哈尔滨其实它就是公交都市的37个公交都市城市之一，因为它是处于一种极寒地带，那么它实际上是不太适合于骑自行车的，因为它将近全年有200多天都是非常低的温度，这样的话骑自行车的话，可能就是在外边非常寒冷的话，就是这种出行方式是不太利的，所以说它的整个自行车道呢，基本上是被压缩到了，就是被机动车这个占用掉了。然后另外还有一些城市，比如说重庆，还有那贵阳，它的城市都是那种山地的这种城市，那么它实际上是也不太适合于这种自行车，因为它骑自行车的话是非常费力的。所以说在这些城市呢，他们的自行车道包括人行道实际上是做的不是特别好。但是另外还有一些城市呢，应该说是在自行车这一块是做的比较好的，特别是一些中小型的一个城市。包括我们现在其中有一个公交都市，它就是新乡，那么它这一块它就建立了专用的一些自行车道来供它的那个行人的自行车的一个使用，跟它公共交通进行一个很好的一个衔接和接驳。然后同时呢，还有另外一个城市就是昆明，也是我们的公交都市城市之一，它目前。因为昆明它是处于我们中国的南方，它的气候条件是非常好，特别适用于我们的电动自行车还有我们的自行车的一个出行。那么但是它同样带了另外一个问题，就是它的一个电动自行车的量是非常之大的，将近180万的这样一个自行车辆，它总共人口是350万，也就是说相对于2个人。就有2个人就有1辆这个电动自行车，那么这样的话就导致带来很多的一些安全的一些方面的问题。那么他们为了解决这样一个问题呢，那么他们就是做了在自行车这方面的做了一些很好的工作，就打算做一个很好的工作，就是比如说在一些公交的换乘枢纽站，他们去做一些停车的一些泊位，然后免费或者是打一定的折扣，就是我通过。一定的技术和一个卡，通过公交卡或什么之类的，我存车我可以免费，然后同时我坐公交的话，那么可以进行一定的一个折扣。那么我要说的就这些，谢谢。
We have another question. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Arun Vora with a mini LLC in Bethesda, Maryland. Only 10 miles from here, 16 kilometers from here. I've been to China a couple of times, and I'm going to talk about the metro in Shanghai. The signage there is just outstanding. I go to Shanghai and I want to go from one level to another where there's several rail lines meet. It's very easy to get around. I come to Washington, where I live, I feel depressed. On the subway here, the signage is so bad that even though I've lived here for many, many years, I don't use it that often. I can't find my way around easily. Now, are all the metros in China, Shenzhen, Beijing, and whatnot, are they also going to follow the signage model of Shanghai?
Who'd like to have a shot?
Well, I mean, I can try. So there's quite a lot of learning from each other from different cities in China. So Shanghai, Shenzhen tend to be the progressive cities. So in fact, many of the new cities that are building metros do get quite a lot of technical cooperation from Shanghai. So even within the World Bank's business, we try to exchange to create a platform for the smaller cities to have that platform to exchange knowledge. At the same time, there is also the consultants that have worked on Shanghai, or the public operator or the consultant that has developed the Shanghai system is often engaged in designing and supervising the implementation of the Shanghai. So there is quite a lot of learning from each other, and I think what we will see in maybe in a few years is the harmonization and the standardization of services across China through this mechanism, through those eastern, more progressive cities going out to the west and the central provinces and transferring their knowledge.
Thank you.
I think you've given a very clear message for Washington, something that's been noted by a number of my colleagues. Yes, please let us know who you are.
Hi, I'm originally come from China. Right now, I'm master students here at Georgetown. So thank you everybody for the amazing presentations. Because I personally grew up in Shenzhen, so I'm very happy to hear some insider stories that I don't even realize as a citizen there. So the question I ask is concerning the private-public partnerships, as we mentioned in Shenzhen case studies, because we know that after introduction to China, it's not being widely adopted. So I'm just wondering, what do you assess this kind of practice in China? Does it have a very promising future? And what is the biggest barriers blocking this practice in China? Is it a policy or other kind of concern? Thanks.
Haitao?
The public-private PPP, we're working on it. I can.
Okay. Professor?
In China, we have a long history for the PPP. If you look at the motorway construction, it's always a PPP because we will collect the revenue from the toll with the private company, and it's kind of a cooperation. And also the metro construction in Shanghai, you can find a lot of station area. It's developed by jointly by private company and the metro company. So sometimes we do not talk it's like Western style PPP, but it's some kind of a cooperation. And the challenge is the government is so strong. So for the private company, sometimes they have to be forced to do something. This they feel is not comfortable, and the secure of the revenue return is not so sure on the agreement. Sometimes it depends on the personal relationship with the government. So this makes it quite difficult. Yeah.
Binyam?
Yeah, just to add on this big topic now, the public-private partnership in China. Yes, I think China is not new to PPP, but there is a renewed focus to actually increase significantly private sector investment for infrastructure. This has to do with the sort of practical problems local governments are facing now. Traditionally, I think as was somehow hinted in the presentation, the financing for urban infrastructure, for transport, for everything, was really generally decentralized to the local government. So 85% of the expenditure comes from local government, although they only have 40% of the revenue. So there was a big gap, and that big gap was basically filled through loans, and then the loans were securitized through future land sales, etc. So that created quite perverse financial system, created a huge unsustainable debt. And from a transport point of view, it also created more sprawl because the local governments would go out and carve out a land, convert it, and develop it, and generate revenue. So now the central government has said local governments can no longer borrow in the fashion that they've been doing, and now they have been encouraged to actually increase the role of private sector investment in management for infrastructure. So we're going to see that happening in China. So whether this is the right policy or not, or an instrument, we will have to see it. There are, as we know, in many from other countries, a number of activities that had to come, or policy measures that the central and local governments have to undertake in order to make PPP more robust and more sustainable. And the central government has now set up like a PPP center. They're passing on many policy guidelines, standard contracts. Also, the National Development and Reform Commission, the Planning Commission of China, is involved in it. So I think it's to be seen. This will be very scaled up, and hopefully the financing system then changes to a more sustainable system, because under a PPP, you will have to show a revenue stream to actually then undertake the transaction. In the past, the local governments did not show any revenue stream. It was just borrowed based on the future land sales mostly, or based on just the urban development company that they have, based on the assets they have. So it will force local governments to be more disciplined, more to be focused on revenue. It might even encourage also cost recovery reforms, like increasing tariffs or doing the land value capture type of investment.
Ladies and gentlemen, I've been getting certain indications from the organizers. Do we have time for one last question? We do.
I'm Graham Smith, retired from the bank. My last 4 years before I retired, I was doing the job that Binyam is doing now. My question is short, but we've seen all the photographs of the awful air quality, not only in Beijing, but a great many other cities. What I haven't heard is any analysis as to how far it's the transport emissions which are primarily to blame, as opposed to other causes. Can you bring us up to date?
In the initial remarks, while this is anecdotal, but I did refer to yesterday's China Daily, which said that for PM 2.5, they were referring to about 30% from vehicle emissions. Yes, and Shanghai.
Actually, so I have some data. For example, Beijing is about 22% transport account to the PM 2.5, and in Shanghai it's about 25%.
Okay.
He's a well-known professor.
Okay.
I'm Jason Chung from National Taiwan University. I've been working with several public sector in China in the past 20 years. Someone said I'm too silent this year, but this is a good opportunity, particularly the Urban Transport Authority being moved from Ministry of Urban Development to, Ministry of Construction to Ministry of Transport 5 or 6 years ago. Although it's still in the, we call reform process. I'm also very pleased that the Chinese government initiated so-called TOD-CT, or public transport metropolis, and put lots of effort for those demonstration cities, including those 37 cities, bringing lots of not just the incentive for the investment, but also the training and those capacity building. But my question is, TOD-CT involved not just transportation sector, but also the urban planning, land use. However, in current situation, the urban planning and land use still under the Ministry of Housing and Rural Construction. And it seems this gap or the integration between these two ministries. So how Professor Pan, we've been talking this many years. We're very pleased that the urban transportation be moved to one unit, one ministry. But when you talk about the TOD metropolis, how this kind of gap or lack of integration must be resolved. Otherwise, one single ministry of transport, I don't think that can resolve this problem in bringing a real TOD cities. Yeah. Another one is just comment on. I think a behavioral change is very crucial, as you mentioned, to move from a car-oriented city into a public transport city. And I think all the leaders, in Taiwan, the mayor take public transport, cycling. We call BMW. Walking, metro, and bus, cycling. So I think we should have some kind of activity that make those the mayor or leader take public transport and cycling every day. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I think rather than responding to that one, we should instead put our hands together for these excellent speakers. And thank you for stimulating questions. I think overall we are coming out of this session with a message of some hope, and that's really needed in this challenge. Thank you.